Hello and welcome. Today's guest is an impact entrepreneur, technology lawyer, and policy leader working in mainstream and digital media, telecommunications, AI and blockchain, and high performance computing infrastructure. She is currently the CEO of Futurity Partners, a strategic consulting firm advising public and private sector organizations on exponential and innovative technologies, digital policy, and ESG and social impact matters. She sits on the board of AMPD, a publicly traded digital content production and cloud infrastructure company, and she is the founder of ProjectInKind.org, the world's first in-kind giving movement supporting local and global communities working on achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. She is a trusted advisor to a number of technology startups, and she serves as an expert advisor to UNESCO in Canada. She has been recognized for her leadership and entrepreneurship as an IT World Top Woman in FinTech and Blockchain, an Obama Foundation Global Civic Leader, Government of Canada Leading Tech Woman, CBC Trailblazer, Bootstrap Impact Award winner, Toastmasters International Community Leadership Award recipient, and a top 40 under 40. Wow, please welcome Tanya Woods. Tanya, oh my goodness. Wow. Welcome to the show. You are a powerhouse, and it is an honor and a privilege to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Ellie, and thank you for that warm introduction. I'm so grateful.
You are certainly involved in a broad range of industries. I mean, you are involved in it all. So what made you go from law into social impact, innovation, and entrepreneurship? I mean, what was that catalyst?
Great question. I started my career obviously as a lawyer, not unlike yourself. And as I moved through the world, I realized there's so much more going on. But I had achieved a level of success that I was very excited about fairly young, and had my first house, had my first child, was really excited about what was ahead, and then had my first car accident. And in the process of, exploring what had happened with the doctors, they came across a potential diagnosis that was very scary. It was, a terminal diagnosis. It was a lot of uncertainty. It took a lot of time to figure out what was going on. And I remember thinking to myself, if this is my life right now, what's my legacy? And that was a big question. And so I started to really unpack my skills, what I had to offer. I was still paying off lots of law school debt, and I couldn't, put my name on a building. And so I thought, well, I've got a baby. What's my deal? What's my story? And that definitely catalyzed the start of the journey.
That's so powerful. Now, I want to go back to something that you said briefly, and that's when you got that diagnosis. It actually caused you to really evaluate and reevaluate your definition of success. I mean, that's really what I'm hearing from you when you said, yeah, I had achieved all this success, but did it really matter? And what's the contribution that I was making? What would my legacy be? So take us back to those moments when you had your car accident, you're navigating the medical process, they give you that diagnosis, and you realize, wow, am I living my purpose? Is this all there is? Take us back to that moment and kind of how you were navigating that.
Good question. They're all going to be good questions from you, I have no doubt. They're hard questions, though. You don't expect at any point in your life to be thinking about this, certainly not in your very early 30s, which is when I was faced with this sort of contemplation. I had been so focused on, achieving the career objectives, getting through school, getting good grades, getting access to the experts, becoming a leader. I was young and in a really amazing position. And it was finally, things were starting to settle. I thought, great, okay, I've done the chase, I've done the long hours in the library, I've done the hustle, and all the things, but now I can take a minute and build a family and build a life and just go from day to day, and I'll get to the legacy building side of things. But the reality was I may not have had a chance to think about it too long. And what they were looking at was a possible terminal bone cancer. And there really isn't a cure for this sort of thing. They were really unsure. My body was reacting to the accident in the most strange ways, strange, interesting, curious. And I thought, okay, well, when can I have the answer? Like, this is not something you leave, on someone's shoulders to contemplate for any length of time. But the reality is, it needed to be dealt with in its due course. So it took about a year before I had a kind of all clear of sorts, but that was long enough. I mean, it was within sort of a month that I realized I didn't know how long I had from the first kind of hint of maybe a possible something. And, my daughter was so little, I was still, holding her in my arms at night. And I just thought, okay, what's my story? Like, what am I going to tell her? And what will she learn from my life? And, I had been through other kind of big life events, and I had committed early on to give back and share my skills. That wasn't a question. It was just sort of, how do I do that at scale that someone will remember, 5 years, 1 year, 10 years, 30 years from now, so that she can learn and take that value into her life and serve others. That's very fundamentally important to me. And the importance of it was very much solidified in those early moments and early weeks of what is this that I'm dealing with.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
that could not have been easy. So there had to be some fear in, oh my goodness, I have built this life. I've achieved this level of success. I'm bringing in this income. I now have a family and a young child to take care of. So, what was the process for you of shifting that? How did you make the shift and deal with the fear of quote unquote losing that level of success or losing that income to shift toward building your legacy?
Fear is a funny little thing sometimes. We have fight or flight or freeze. I certainly was ready to fight. And I thought, if I live beyond a year, I'm in an amazing situation. If I live any day longer than what may or may not be possible, I'm in an amazing situation. And so I will be honest with you, I didn't actually fear the loss of money. That wasn't my fear at all. The fear was being forgotten, and it was not doing a parental duty to serve her and generations to come that hopefully will live and prosper through my family by giving them a lesson to just think through. And I had tremendous examples up to that point in my life of service leadership. I had been to Cuba and I had seen some amazing on the ground efforts there. I had also traveled to all different parts of the world and seen incredible things happen. And leaving a legacy of philanthropy is something in my mind I always wanted to do. And for me, it wasn't just a fear about money. I just don't want to be forgotten. And so in short, I thought, okay, I can sit here and be paralyzed and do nothing, or I can start to take steps and really take account with the resources I have, with my abilities, with the time I may or may not have. What could I do? And therein began the journey of what can I do to help? What can I do to make a difference? I didn't set out initially to do half the things I've done, but I just thought I've got to figure out what I can do. And I stumbled right into the opportunity, which was it was really hard to figure out what to do. It was really hard to understand who needed my help. It was really hard to go help. And that's ridiculous. In this day and age, that was a frustration. I thought this silly. I started asking friends, how do you help? What do you do? And where do you go to find ways to help? And they didn't have answers. They also will make phone calls, we'll send emails, but oftentimes we have to chase a lot and life is busy. And I thought, okay, there's the start. I'm going to think through how to make doing different kinds of philanthropy easier. And so I began, as probably lawyers would do, ran to the library, grabbed all the books, and just started researching, what is this called? Is it called philanthropy? Is it called something else? I stumbled into concepts around shared value initiatives out of Harvard, Michael Porter, Mark Kramer's thinking around how to build economies and communities that are supportive of one another and that can be resilient, super strong, and embed service as a value and a priority. I also learned all about the way social media might be able to help or not help, and began to learn about causes. And I couldn't pick a cause, and I thought they're all important. And who am I to say what's more important to a community than another cause? They're all a part of the story, and that's the journey where it began and started. And then a lot of just asking people what they think, if they were suffering the same problems, how I could help, working with business owners, thinking how I could help them. And we went on. We started to innovate.
I love the points that you're sharing, and I want to make sure that they are really highlighted because I think right now in particular there are a lot of people who are at a crossroads. Right, that's one of the gifts of COVID is that time for reflection and the time to say, wait a minute, am I doing what I love? Am I making the contribution that I desire to make? Am I a part of something bigger than myself? What is my life's purpose? These kind of dialogues that now we've had for the last couple of years. And so I know from conversations that I've had that the process of what do I want? How am I going to show up? Does my life matter? What is my legacy? And the process of figuring that out has stumped a lot of people. So I love that you're walking us through your process, that you too had those questions and that you turned to research. You asked questions of other people and you asked questions of yourself. And that's a process that anyone can do. Right? That's a process that it doesn't matter where you are in your life. It doesn't matter whether you're questioning to get into philanthropy or whether you're questioning in a relationship or whether you're questioning in entrepreneurship or you're questioning just in life in general. So what I am taking away from that is ask yourself and ask others.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the key for a lot of the capacity to move forward. The reality is we don't know all of this, and we're not supposed to have it all within ourselves. It's hard to understand what you care about when you haven't engaged directly on issues. I found I cared a lot about food insecurity. I cared a lot about hunger. In fact, it really got me excited to think that I could help support community building and innovation around that space. And so as I engaged, it happened over courses of years, not months, not weeks. It started with a simple call to a chef saying, hey, do you think you could cook enough food to feed a city? And we did an experiment in 2017 called Feed the City, Feed Your Soul. And this was with Project in Kind. And they said, we could probably feed a city. And I said, what do we need to feed a city? Can we really show something that could be repeated over and over and over again within communities, whether they're large or small? Can we make a process to feed each other? How can we rethink hunger and food insecurity? How do we just pretend we don't have systems in place? Just pretend they're not there for now. What would it look like if we innovated something different? Can we work together? And of course we did it. And I mean, we fed thousands of people in the middle of Canada's capital on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. And we showed we could do it. And we did it all with no money. There was no exchange of money, which is very, very important because oftentimes we'll say, well, we don't have the money. The charity didn't raise the money. Well, we have everything else. We've got someone who knows how to cook. We've got space. We've got equipment. We've got food, whether from farmers or grocery stores. We just started playing. And this became a model that actually worked. And we weren't able to do that but for what you just outlined. We had to do a bit of research. So I did a bit of research with a small group of friends who were very much supportive of wanting to do more. And then we, of course, started asking the questions. And in asking the questions of everybody, and especially those we wanted to see empowered, enabled, and supported, we asked them, what would help you? What should we know about your situation? What does it mean to live in food insecurity from your perspective? The most fundamental stakeholders when you want to serve are those you're serving. And so creating a space for that dialogue was essential. Learning from the charities and the not-for-profits supporting that ecosystem, that can openers, here's a great example. Many food drives ask for cans. Well, most people don't know, but like 40% of the people living with food insecurity don't have can openers. So what on earth are we doing giving cans? And so these simple things, we started to learn about these frictions and thinking through, okay, well, what if we don't need any cans? What if we don't need any preserved foods? What if we can do this with fresh food? How would it work? How would it work if we only had $1? How would it work if we had many people and so on? So this was a big piece of it for the story. And we repeated the same process for poverty. We did a beautiful collection of pajamas for children and families living in poverty. pajamas being such a fundamental thing to kids for their routines. When they go to school, they need to have a healthy nighttime routine. And when you're living with less means, prioritizing buying pajamas isn't really up there because you can sleep in your clothes, right? So thinking through some of these experiences for those you want to serve is really important. But yeah, anyway, there was a lot of that.
Yeah, I love that because again, you are dropping golden nuggets that are applicable across industry, across the spectrum. So now we know, okay, ask yourself, do some research, ask others, particularly ask the stakeholders, ask the people you want to serve, or ask people further in the journey than you. You don't have to have the answer. I love also that you're really touching on the power of community. Success takes a village. You don't have to know the answer and you don't have to do it alone. There are people that you can collaborate with. There are communities that you can build to help you live your legacy now, to help you step into your purpose, to help you build your business, to help you serve the population that you would like to serve, whether that's as an entrepreneur, whether that's as a volunteer, whether that's as an employee, whether that's as a consultant, or whether that's in philanthropy. So I love, love, love that you're saying, ask the people you want to serve, get into proximity with people who are further along in the journey, build a community, be part of a community, band together as forces for good, band together to actually make things happen. And I also really love the point that you made about all of this was done with no money exchanged. So what you're really saying is there's always a way. And don't let money stop you, right? That you can think outside the box. I love that you ask people, what do you have that you can contribute, right? The space, the food itself, the knowledge of how to be the chef or prepare the meals or deliver the meals. So important because many of us say, well, I don't have the money, so I can't. I can't do the thing. I can't have the thing. I can't build the thing. And what you're really showing is that actually you can. That you don't need the money. You just need to ask.
Correct. I mean, you can, and not only can you can do it in the most extraordinary, tremendous ways. You can do it in a small way with your one block or your one small community, or you can do it across an entire city. You could also do it across an entire country. And this is the part where it gets so exciting for me is the thing I learned most is to trust my instincts. We all have within us the capacity to love humanity. Philanthropy is about the love we express for humanity, for our neighbors around us, close and around us, far across the globe. If we have an intention and we want to see something that serves, we can certainly bring it into being. We can certainly bring it into those communities, but we have to be very humble in the offer. And it's definitely making sure we start with, how can I help? And then we listen, and we listen well. And I've spoken to charities and nonprofits all over the world. I made sure before we built any technology, before we built any programming, before we offered anything, that it wasn't just one view, it was multiple views. And then I was very much keen and continue to be keen to bring this around the world. It's not going to be just a Canadian thing. It's not just going to be a North American thing. The point is, this is a global movement to inspire everybody to think through their philanthropy and see themselves as philanthropists that they are. But in order to do that well and to be effective, you have to be humble in what you hear back. You can't put your needs ahead of anybody else's. If you're sincerely there to help, then it's listening and it's helping in the ways that you're being told how you can help. You may not be the perfect fit for a perfect organization you want to help. They might not need what you have to offer, but then help them and help them find that thing that they actually need. Help them meet that person that can further them along, that can empower and enable their mission and their mandate. A lot of it is connecting, and it's very much rooted in partnerships and working together.
Absolutely. Collaboration is key. We can go so much further be so much more effective and help so many more people when we collaborate, when we partner, when we work together. Now, we've talked a lot about the success that you've been able to attain in Project in Kind, but I'm sure it has not always been smooth, and I'm sure it hasn't always been easy. So how have you been able to persevere through the tough times?
Oh, that's such a great piece of reflection to offer. It's hard. It's hard. I set out with a really bold ambition. I wanted to introduce a reminder. It's not a new way of thinking. I think we've been aware that we have these resources. Communities, often there's many communities around the world that do function in a very resource focused way where they allocate what is needed where it's needed. That's not as much the case in North America. It's a little bit more complicated, a little more political, a little more bureaucratic. And there's systems that have evolved that worked certainly for a point in time and still work to some extent today. But the truth of the matter is the third sector, the philanthropic not-for-profit sector, is definitely not online like business and like everybody else is. There's definitely upgrades needed to those systems, and there's a huge level of opportunity. When I was thinking about things, I'm someone who's always been very future forward. As you heard in my bio, I play around with pretty advanced technologies, but I've done that my entire career. And I've never been afraid to walk into a room where someone pushes back because they don't understand. I wrote pieces of legislation that had to do with things at a time when most people in the world didn't even know what I was thinking about. We just saw a forthcoming risk. I see forthcoming opportunities. I also factor in those risks. And it's moving forward to just educate, to love into the world what you're trying to show, to not take it personally if someone doesn't understand. It's not personal. And it's also opportunities to learn. I've had the very significant good fortune of meeting all kinds of leaders around the world. Everybody from President Obama and Michelle Obama to Michael Milken to Larry Fink to country leaders of the World Economic Forum, my own prime minister many times. And these are people that we look up to. We look at their guides in the world, their beacons for a lot of what we're doing economically, socially, environmentally. And the reality is, at the end of the day, they're very few. The best conversations I've had have often been in the grassroots levels of things, right on the ground with people saying to me, this is what we're thinking. We don't understand what you're talking about. And if someone doesn't understand something that I'm talking about, I always take it back and think, okay, maybe need to reframe the message. Maybe I'm not understanding what I've heard. Maybe I just need to be patient. Maybe we need to experiment together and work it out together to find that common language. Thinking through charity from a non-cash way, whether you're thinking about it in the in-kind sense, which is well understood in accounting worlds, we all know what in-kind giving is for the most part, to the crypto sense. I want to donate Bitcoin or some other kind of crypto solution to a big problem. Lots of times people don't understand it. And so it's having patience, it's persevering, it's thinking through how you're sharing the message, if there's better ways to communicate it, finding opportunities to try to experiment, and then considering every project as just that, an experiment. We're experimenting. And if we're experimenting, the pressure is drastically reduced. We're not delivering, year-end results to shareholders. There's no lawsuit that should come, hopefully, from an experiment. We all understand we're just trying to build something better. And then the obligation is just making sure I share the learnings forward and, being humble, being humble in all the face of it. It's hard. Some days it's really hard. Of course, we all need money to do things. So money is a piece of what we're always looking for, is financial support. That's not always there. There's lots of causes and definitely not enough money. And so we find new creative ways to solve that problem. There's lots of people that don't believe or that maybe don't understand, and we're not going to win them all at the first pass. So we just keep going and we find new opportunities and new ways that they can maybe just touch a little bit into the space that we're playing in. Being creative, being resilient, that stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And so we touched a little bit on how you have dealt with fear, that it wasn't so much the fear when you made that leap from practicing law into philanthropy, that it wasn't about the fear of losing success or the financial fear. It was more about the fear of not living your legacy now, not leaving a legacy, right? The fear of being forgotten. And so you've talked a little bit about that. And I love that you're also sharing the reframe of leaning into looking at things like an experiment, because that makes it more fun and it alleviates some of the pressure. Now, along the way, beyond the fear, you have undoubtedly experienced the negative self talk, the judgment that certainly has to creep in, doubt. So, what is your process for keeping your eye on the bigger picture, for continuing to show up and stay aligned and stay in purpose, in legacy, and in service, even when the inner critic rears its head?
Oh, the inner critic is nasty sometimes, but kindness is the kind of value and virtue that I've chosen to prioritize. And if I were being truly fair to that promise to myself, I equally have to apply it to myself. It's hard to do sometimes. I'm really ambitious and I have really bold aspirational goals. I want to be part of a really big, awesome thing. And I want also to be showing my daughter by example what I'm doing. And it's hard. There's days you're just not moving the needle. For me, it's not fast enough. It's not big enough. It's not landing. The systems that I'm trying to affect change in are not absorbing it at a rate that I feel we really need to prioritize the risks that we're talking about globally and that we're seeing ahead. We're not benefiting from the fruits of being amazing, amazing, strong, resilient communities because we're not working in community in a kind of strong, beautiful way in many parts of our world. And it frustrates me. And I think, okay, Tanya, like, what have you missed? And so you do have the negative self-talk. You definitely have the frustration when you don't get a grant awarded to you, or you don't get named on a certain thing that you're hoping you could influence with the dialogue you want to drive forward and represent the community. But the reality is it's balancing out and recognizing, like, when is it an ego thing and when is it a progress thing? And I'm human. We all have ego, and sometimes it's ego, and an ego says, I want recognition, or I want to be here because I feel what I have to say is important. And when you strip that all back, it's like, okay, relax. Like, every door that's closed, you'll have others open. And maybe this platform is for somebody else right now. And they really need to be the ones there because this will, in a way you may not ever understand, open up space for them to move their impact forward. We can't all be on the thing all the time. It just doesn't work. And so it's just being honest about what is ego. When ego creeps in, it can cause a lot of fear and uncertainty, doubts, all the negative self-talk. That I put that on ego. I'm like, okay, chill out. And just move forward.
Yeah, so you always then are able to bring it back to the bigger mission, the bigger purpose, right? To take yourself out of the equation almost and say, wait, what can I do?
How can I serve? And if
How
I'm
can I?
really living the purpose, I'm in service of a greater humanity, a greater planet, the greater good, and not myself. I mean, myself is part of it, yeah, but it's not about me. It's about what am I living and breathing into the spaces around me? How am I loving forward, you know, what I hope the world could become?
Yeah. What's one thing I can do right now? One person I can love right now? One
Exactly.
action I can take to move the needle? And even when the progress isn't as fast as we would sometimes love, it's still progress. And we
It's still
are moving
progress.
the needle, right?
Yeah, Ellie, I think that's a great point, though. It is still progress, and we are moving the needle. And you and I, we met and collided in a very special place, surrounded by very special, like-minded people, definitely service leaders and business leaders as well, amazing business leaders. But even there, I remember I went and I thought, I want to be here, and my promise to myself is not to bring forward my platform. I'm actually going to just be here and listen. I need a reset too, right? We all need to reset sometimes. I'm going to be here with love and kindness in my heart and engage the conversations, go back to listening mode, to recenter, to think things through. And every moment of that journey from when I left my house on a Friday night, to arriving, in the Caribbean on a, I think it was a Sunday, but I mean, I stopped and touched the lives of so many people in that journey, from the person just checking my bag to people I was interacting with. And I was very intentional to remember everybody has their things they're carrying along. In this moment, while I might not be advancing my project forward, at the end of the day, it's kindness as a legacy. And so it was holding doors for people, smiling. If someone wanted to have small chat, I had small chat. It was just expressing kindness and being very much present in that intentionally. And I mean, sometimes it's those small choices. And it's also, if you want to think about it from an impact perspective, who do you buy from?
Yeah.
Are you buying your day-to-day things from someone local? Do they share your values? Are they supporting the community by you supporting them? Does that further their ability to support? How do I show up every day? Who am I around? Who do I make the choice to support in the various things I do? Also very, very important for living forward my hope of a of a different world.
Absolutely. Living it, right? Being the embodiment of the values that you hold, being the embodiment of the legacy that you are desiring to build, right? It's living that legacy now,
Mhm,
not waiting to leave it behind.
mhm,
And that is in the day to day choices that you make, in how you show up, in the kindness that you exude, in the businesses that you support, in the choices that you make. So I love that you are bringing that up, because those are things that we can all do. We can all make intentional choices that align with our values and our vision. We can all live our legacy now. Now, you mentioned you have been around the best of the best of the best. You have
mhm.
been in some very, very powerful and influential and wise circles. What's the best advice that anyone has given you?
Oh, the best advice I've had is to do me well. So be me, be authentic, and do it well. Don't spend too much time hanging out in those dark thoughts. Yeah. Don't spend that much time in the dark corners. I mean, the reality is we don't know how many minutes we actually have. We don't know. And that's a hard thought to comprehend, but if you understand that tomorrow that could be it, then don't waste time wondering, wasting time, beating yourself up for things you haven't done. Like, just out there and do your best every day and be your best. And your best on one day may not be your best on another. And everybody has bad days. That's okay. But get on with it and be there every day for what you want to leave behind. And I'll say that's been some of the most solid advice I've had, is just be the best at you and your lanes. And if you want to experiment, go experiment, but bring it back to you, and just put your whole heart out there.
I love that. It really comes down to do you, be you, show up as you. I love that.
Yeah.
So, what's one thing that you wish someone had told you that you had to learn the hard way?
Oh, let me tell you, Ellie, had someone said to me, this is going to take you your whole lifetime to probably never achieve everything, but to remember to celebrate the wins on the way. I mean, patience for me is a struggle. I feel a fire in my belly. I have an urgency inside me that I can't explain, that I just feel like we really need to pay attention to what's happening in the world around us. We need to work together. I don't, I honestly don't care if it's my idea that launches us all forward. It's not about that. It's that we need to be ideating and innovating. And I feel that fire. With that fire, that urgency, that persistence, patience can get left behind. And learning how to become patient has been very much a part of my journey. And I wish someone had said, okay, listen, are you sure you still want to do this? It's going to be bumpy, it's going to be slow, you're going to weave in and out of projects. People aren't going to know what to make of what you're doing, but it will work, and it will work. You will leave trails behind you that will inspire people, that might give a little bit of glimmer of a different thought pattern, a different perspective, that might do something to cause maybe over time a big shift, but you won't see it overnight. I wish I had really been able to comprehend some of that, but at the same time, it didn't matter when I started. It was just very much, I don't know how much time I have. I don't think any of us do. And I need to get going. I'm just gonna try. And I've had a pretty awesome start. I don't think it's, hopefully God willing, not anywhere near the finish. And yeah, we just keep going, and I bring my family along with me for the ride. So they're learning while I'm learning, and hopefully they learn that part of me and that I have time to develop it even further.
I love that. Sometimes us not knowing what the journey ahead is actually going to look like is more powerful. Because if we knew the bumps and the bruises and the twists and the turns and the challenges and the frustrations and the fears and the obstacles and all the things that might be headed our way, maybe we wouldn't take that first step. Maybe we wouldn't take the journey. And so sometimes it's listening to that fire in your belly and moving forward just based on, I have to do this. This is my calling. This is my mission. And taking that first step, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. And along the journey, as that fire in your belly really builds, just leaning into that, to go up and over and around and under all the obstacles and the challenges that come, leaning into that fire when you're weary and frustrated and things aren't going the way that you would love. Harnessing that power to get back up because the mission is bigger than you. The need is greater than you. The difference that you can make is greater than you. The legacy that you can leave is greater than you. The lives that you can change are greater than you. And so just living in that passion, that commitment, that alignment. So let's talk about that alignment. When you're getting knocked around with all that's coming your way, how do you stay aligned? What's your biggest tip for course correction and when the journey is pulling you off track?
Yeah, I have a few go-tos. I have people in my life I confer with, people I speak to, I reach out to. I have advisors, mentors, trusted friends. I I go and I chat, and making sure I get honest feedback about a situation is really, really valuable. Like, I might experience something in one way, and that just may not be how it could only be perceived or only be experienced. That's a good little bit of pushback for that negative self-talk. So I do that, I confer. But I also take time. I'm very introverted, so I take time with myself. I do a lot of meditation. I map out with pen and paper, map out what life should look like, what I would prefer. It's a sort of recent bit of language that I find incredibly helpful. So if I find myself in a situation or I feel a little off course, what do I prefer? What would I prefer? And then asking, is that in line with what I'm trying to do? I have a goal every night that when I close my eyes, whether it be for the last time or this time, and there'll be another time, we never know. But when I close my eyes, am I at peace with myself? Am I at peace with what I've done, what I've tried to do, what I failed at, who I've been? Am I at peace with that? And if I'm not, then I know, okay, hoping there's a tomorrow, then I'll look at this tomorrow and I'll think it through tomorrow. And I'll come back to this until I find satisfaction in myself that I have enough to move forward. I don't sit around long in deep, deep, deep thought, but I do constantly set goals and objectives for myself, and I check back in with them and where I want to be.
So piggybacking on that, you touched on some of the practices that you use to pull yourself back into alignment. Let's talk about self-care. The arch nemesis often of overachievers who really give, right? Whose calling is service, who truly live in that paradigm of how can I serve, how can I show up, what difference can I make? We know that an empty vessel has nothing to give. So how do you fill your own cup? What's your self-care practice?
Yeah, my self-care practice involves yoga. It involves physical fitness, getting out into nature. I love the term nature bathing. So this is something that's really important. Feeling the sun on my face, taking in a big breath of fresh air. I'm very fortunate to live in a beautiful country surrounded by absolutely stunning nature. So being outside, that's a big part of it. Bare feet on the ground, connecting, it's a big piece of it. I spend time. I really like sort of the, if you're anybody here is familiar with the kind of Nordic saunas, but you move through hot and cold baths and there's a cycle and a ritual to it. I will go and do these kind of things. It just resets my whole system. I'll do things like that. I'll read for self-care. I'll read. I'm enjoying different books right now, but generally they're on the topic of joy, happiness, well-being, things like this. So I go to education and these things I do. And then of course, sleep, a clean diet, trying to pay attention when things go off the rails as they can do, because you can't exactly empty your cup and you're just a shell. And it's not great when you get to that place. You've got to be aware of it. And sometimes you're just so much adrenaline, so much forward motion. Sometimes we do, especially if we're service leaders, we deplete ourselves completely and it just happens. The adrenaline of serving and being out there and chasing the things. In my case, I travel quite a lot and it's exhausting. We've got to respect our bodies, our minds, but also our bodies. And I find my mind runs miles ahead of my body sometimes. So it's a tough place to be when you find yourself there, but committing to take a minute to actually just breathe, reset, set aside the time that you need. If it's week, 2 weeks, if you can, if it's got to be done on weekends, whatever it is. I think that's the most important part of self-care. And whatever your rituals are, making sure that you're honoring them and following them each day. And when you're not, that you're resetting when you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. And finding for yourself what is that ritual that works for you, that actually refills your cup. Because I don't know about you, but when I was figuring out what worked best for me, I got all caught up in all the things they tell us to do, right? Oh, well, you need to get up at 5:30 in the morning and you need to drink your celery juice and have the room temperature glass of water with the lemon, and then you need to move your body, and oh, don't forget to sit there and journal for an hour, and like all the things, right, that we are told to do. And I forgot to ask myself, what would I love? What would I prefer? And are all of these practices things that are actually refilling my cup? Or are they just more things on the to-do list that are adding pressure? So I love the point of find what works for you. Think about what would you love, what restores you, what recharges you, what refills you, and do that. Do more of what you love, do more of what nourishes your soul, and less of what we're just told to do. So I love that you brought that up. Now we started, let's take full circle here. We started at the beginning of this conversation talking about the realization of, does my life matter? Will my life matter? Will I be forgotten? What do I want my legacy to be? How can I not only leave a legacy, but live it? So let's take you now to the end of your life best lived. You've left it all on the table. What do you want them to say about you?
She was fearless. She put into action the practice. It is a practice of kindness. She put it into action. And she wouldn't give up. I think those are three pretty awesome things. And one hopes they can also say she made a difference.
Amazing. So let's also take you back to that moment of holding your daughter in your arms and looking down at her. What would you say to her now?
You bring on the heavy ones right at the end. I say, you got this, kid. We got this. We got this.
We got this. So how can people get a hold of you? How can they become part of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, look, I'm easy enough to get a hold of. My email is Tanya, Tanya, at projectinkind.org. You can email me directly. I'm glad to receive emails, questions. If you want to get involved, if you need help figuring stuff out, I'm happy to help. That's where you can find me on the service leadership side. And then, of course, I'm on social media. My handle is at being TMW. So I'm being myself there. I'm at being TMW on Twitter and Instagram. Please reach out. If you'd like to support Project in Kind, please visit projectinkind.org. There's lots of ways you can get involved. There's amazing materials and resources that are available for free that you can start to think through your legacy, do some planning, learn about the Sustainable Development Goals, read some of the research that we've produced so that you can learn. We're going to continue building out that website and that resource kit and make it available freely for many more years to come, and would love to learn about projects that you may be working on, see how I can support as well. I'd love to help support whatever I can. And yeah, Ellie, thank you for creating space for this conversation today. I think it's a really important one. So many more of us are facing our mortality in new kind of ways and thinking through what matters to us as we're hearing about the Great Resignation. I think it's really more about the Great Reflection, and that's what's happening around us. So we all matter. There's very important roles each and every single one of us have to play in our communities and on this planet. It doesn't all look the same for everybody. It's all unique and individual, and we'll cross paths with each other. We have communities to build. And I think it's really important that we know this and we respect each other in these kind of ways and create the spaces that you've created. Thank you so much for this.
Well, it is my honor and my privilege. Projectinkind.org. Each and every one of us can make a difference. You matter. Your life matters. And with Project in Kind, there are ways to serve not only yourself and your family, but your community to make a difference. You don't need any money. You just need a heart of service and just need to reach out. So projectinkind.org. Now, Tanya, before we sign off today, any parting words you'd like to share with the audience?
Leave love where you go. Leave love where you go. Think about that. Noodle that a little bit. I like to say noodle things. But what does that mean? And it can mean just a simple interaction. It can mean the way you choose to do your daily life, but leave love where you go.
Leave love where you go. Amen. And so it is. Tanya, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for the work that you do in the world. Thank you for how you show up. Thank you for creating a platform like Project in Kind, where people can band together and truly make a difference in their communities and in the world at large. Thank you. Till next time.